Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD, or Application and Website Development Program, and in particular the AWD1100 C# language programming class, I've been going through a series of video presentations that I'm doing based on the textbook for the class, which as you can see on the screen is Murox C# 2015. I have finished parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the book, which gets me to part 5. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to work with files and data streams, and a couple things to mention. First, again, I am doing these tapings from my house, so if I have to occasionally pause or whatever for whatever reason, that's why. It's also very, very windy outside. I can hear a lot of wind blowing. Alright, so that's first thing. And second, let's just get to it. Alright, so again, chapter 21, how to start with files and data streams. Now, one thing about files, I think I mentioned this in the last lecture, but I am going to say it again, and that is there are two basic ways to make data persist. Now, one is what we've learned about in the last few chapters, and that's through the use of a database. All right? And with a database, whether you agree with what I'm about to say or not, I guess is up to you, but the data really is in a structured format. With files, it can be in a structured format, or it just might be saved. All right? However. But to me, a lot of the times when I think about data that's being saved in a file, it is possibly, as an example, it's from data entry personnel, and it's put into a file so that later somebody can actually use that and use it as input into a database. Alright, so again, how to work with files and data streams. We have one applied objective, that is to develop an application that requires the use of text or binary files, and 3 knowledge objectives. Distinguish between a text file and a binary file. Describe the use of FileStream, StreamReader, StreamWriter, BinaryReader, and BinaryWriter objects. Alright. And finally, describe 2 common types of I/O exceptions. Now, I'm going to do something here that I don't normally do, and that is I'm going to come out here and say difference between text file and binary file, and then I'll give you my own definition. Alright, so it says here, while both binary and text files contain data stored as a series of bits, the bits in text files represent characters, while the bits in binary files represent custom data. While text files contain only textual data, binary files can contain more than that. Well, here's my take on it for whatever this is or is not worth. And that is, text files can be read by a simple text editor. In other words, I can use Notepad, Notepad++, TextMate if I'm using a Mac, etc. But a binary file cannot be read with a simple text editor. Alright, so System.io classes used to work with drives and directories. Well, a couple things about this. When you start thinking about working with classes and the like, alright, notice there is a directory class, alright, and which is basically going to be a series of a folder type of structure. Alright, there'll be a file class, which will allow you to work with files, as it says, and a path class, which will basically allow you, or show you an exact path to something. Now, when you use this stuff, what you're going to be adding or putting in there as a using statement is what's shown here, which is using system.io, where IO, of course, is short for input, output. All right. Some of the methods of the directory class, notice exists. You can check to see if the file exists, if the file path is correct, etc. Create directory. All right, so if something doesn't exist, you can create a directory. Delete. All right, and delete, notice that last delete there, delete path recursive, which in my opinion is like being at the top of the root and saying delete everything underneath me. All right, so here's an example, and you'll notice we've got what? We're saying our directory is everything on the C drive, and underneath the C drive, it's a folder called C# space 2015, and underneath that is a folder named Files. All right, so what you're saying is if that directory does not exist, create it. All right, so again, continuing on, I just went through that example with you. So notice we've got examples, methods of the directory class. We've got exists, create directory, delete, and delete. And then we've got some for the file class, exists, delete, copy, and move. So this, again, is working with entire directory structures, stuff we see here. And this is working with files. All right. So notice what it says here. You're trying to check and see if the directory has got a file called products.txt. If it does exist, delete it. All right. Now, when you look here at a text file and a binary file in a text editor, some binary files, in fact, to my knowledge, most binary files cannot be read in a text editor. That's always been what I've been told is one of the things that differentiates a text file from a binary file. All right, so here's the author's take. Text file, a file that contains text. All right, in other words, strings of characters. All right, a binary file is a file that can potentially contain a variety of data types. Like what? Like media. All right, so a couple types of streams here. Text streams for transferring text data, binary streams for transferring binary data. All right, here's classes that are used to work with these. Now, one thing about this, and you'll see this if you work with files enough. All right, so notice you've got a FileStream class, and notice it provides information for both input and output. All right, then you've got StreamReader and StreamWriter, which are used to handle streams of characters, and to my knowledge, StreamReader and StreamWriter are used for text files, whereas BinaryReader and BinaryWriter are used for binary type of files. All right, so when you come in, as it says, the syntax for creating a file stream object is shown right here. So you're creating it, you're giving it the path, you're giving it the mode. A couple things about the mode. Let's look at these. If you create a file in append mode, if the file already exists, the file pointer should be added to or placed at the end of the file. All right. With create, okay, depends on typically how this is set up. With many of these, create will, if you do a create, if there's a file there by that name, it'll replace what was there. But you can also put in code that will check, and if it exists, you would ask the user first. I believe create new will only create it if the file does not already exist. Open, pretty obvious. Open or create. So when you open a file, if the file does not exist, it will be created. All right. In fact, that's probably the way this is. And probably with just an open, if you try it and it's not there, you'll probably get an error. All right. So here's different ways that you can work on this stuff. If it's read-only, it's just that. Alright, I'm going to try to continue on with this, and again, read only, read and write. Read only, write only, read and write available. Now notice we have it for file access, we have it for enumeration, and common methods of the FileStream class. Again, not spending much time on this. Kind of as I mentioned to you before, it's sort of giving you the 35,000 foot view because this isn't used all that often. So here we're setting up a path for a file, and then we're setting up a new file stream that's going to be able to go through that path, have it set up for a certain mode, that being create, and we'll be able to write to it. So that's creating, as it says, a new file stream object for writing, and another one for reading. Typically, again, for writing, alright, if you do a create like this, if the file does exist, it'll be overwritten. Typically, when you try to open up a file for reading, it should already exist. So you might want to do a file exists on it first. Alright, why? Because, when you work with I/O, input-output, you can have exceptions that come up. A regular I/O exception, a directory not found, a file not found. Alright, you can have a bad path, you can have all sorts of things that come up. So that's why a lot of times you'll see this stuff stuck inside of file catch. Remember when you're, or try catch rather, when you're using try catch, you have to put the more more specific, less general things have got to go first. Alright, and the more general things go down towards the bottom. More specific on top, more general down at the bottom. And just like we looked at before, you can have a finally, which typically can be important when you're working with file handling, as it says, to close your connection. Alright, so here's some methods of the StreamReader, write, which would write everything on one, writes the data to the output stream and keeps the cursor on that line. Write line, which would move the cursor to a new line after writing a line, and close. Alright, so that was a little bit on stream writing. Here's stream reading. Peek, which is kind of like a look ahead. Alright, so it'll show you the next character, and if the next character is not available, meaning you reach the end, it'll return a -1. Read, which will read the next character in the stream. Read line, which will read the next line full of characters. Alright, read to the end, which takes from where you currently are and reads to the end of the file. And close, which we've already discussed. Alright. So again, you can see there's several examples here. I'm not going through any of this stuff really. Alright. But I want to finish this, even though it might be a little longer than some of the things I work with. Here's the syntax for creating a BinaryWriter object. Remember, binary is, I look at a binary file as basically being a non-text file. Alright, you can write them, okay. So here we're writing from a collection of product objects we talked about earlier. So we're using write to a binary file, so we're writing this out, and rather than writing it out to a regular file, we are writing it to a binary file, which we might be able to use with some special kind of editor or something else. You'll notice when you look in here, most of these are very similar to things we've already seen. Alright, you can read different types of data in here as well. And that pretty much, I believe, is it for the chapter. Now in the next chapter, which is chapter 22, I will go over how to work with XML or extensible markup language files. I'll be back with that in just a couple of minutes.